So despite the fact that in both the description, pinned comment, and hint sarcastic tone of the first part of the video, a lot of intellectuals pointed out that the Entente did indeed win the First World War, and everything that I was saying in the video was wrong. So I guess I have to point it out to everyone that that's the joke. Führerreich is supposed to be from the perspective of someone in the Kaiserreich universe. Go watch the Kaiserreich video if you don't know what that is. Alright, so it turns out new lore got released for the time that I already covered in the last video, so I'm gonna speedily cover those parts. 1919. Hungary declares independence and later becomes a Soviet republic, but the Entente comes and is like no, and then puts a new guy in power. 1920. Transylvania becomes a country. 1925. Bunch of instability in Poland's government and then a new prime minister is appointed, but he gets assassinated, so there's more fighting. Alright, now we're caught up to where we left off, at 1927. So the Hungarian populace starts getting mad at the Prime Minister for sucking the Entente's dick and force him to stand down. Miklos Horthy also forms a black shirt militia to totally safeguard the peace and not overthrow the government when given the opportunity. In 1928 in America, Gilded Tuesday happens and the economy goes down the toilet. Rather than actually take responsibility like some barbarian, everyone just starts blaming each other. The situation also isn't helped by the fact that a bunch of deposed radical socialists from the Soviet Union arrive in the country. Also to add insult to injury, the Philippines declare independence. Revolution also breaks out in Mexico where the Americans are kicked out by 1930, and America can't do much about this since, Great Depression. By 1931 a ceasefire is finally signed between the two sides. Back in Hungary, Bela Kun returns to form a Red Militia, and before you weebs ask, Kun is a last name, not a Japanese honorific. To end the year, the British Parliament fails to pass the Statute of Westminster, which angers many in the British Dominions, even getting a passive-aggressive sorry from the Canadians. In fact, Britain's just a whole lot more imperialist and aggressive in this timeline, which kinda causes a rift between them and France, which eventually causes the Entente to split. The next year in America, Herbert Hoover gets killed by a bunch of anarchists, so the presidency is passed to Charles Curtis, and since it's an election year, he gets re-elected. Also down in South America, war between Bolivia and Paraguay erupts over the Chaco region. Argentina intervenes against Bolivia in the war, which forces the Bolivians to surrender. Meanwhile in Hungary, democracy is suspended by Miklej Kerolyi because of all the militias popping up everywhere. In 1933, Dressler finally seizes power in Germany and begins purging time for his new Völkist regime for the next few years. Around the same time, the Rhine splits off from Germany to become its own state, though it basically was a puppet of the Entente. 1934 and 35 are interesting for South America, when a war between Peru and Colombia ends with Peru taking some territory from Colombia. In 1935, both Uruguay and Colombia see regime changes too. In Soviet Russia, the Constituent Assembly finds out about the illegal activities of the Communist Vanguard, a group that basically made enemies of the revolution disappear. All of its members except Sergei Kirov are jailed. To end off 1935, Indian rebels begin to storm British Raj governmental buildings, starting the 1935 Indian Rebellion. That's all folks, go visit r/Führerreich for more info as this mod has not been released yet. Thanks to Patreon Skylar Weston, Emerson Salmer Rubio, and Heli Pilot.